Welcome to the deep dive. You know those digital forms? The ones that sometimes feel like, they're specifically designed to make you sigh.
Oh, yeah, we all know them.
Well, we've been wrestling with why they can be so much,
Mhm.
and we've unearthed a really interesting perspective from a Vertaware special report called Forms Are Just Interfaces for Broken Processes.
Interesting title.
It is, and it's got us thinking that maybe the form itself isn't the core issue, but actually a sign of something deeper going on.
That's the crux of it, really. Vertaware suggests that the common digital form we encounter isn't some inevitable technological step.
Right.
Instead, it often reflects underlying inefficiencies, maybe even broken processes within organizations. Their core idea is quite sharp. Forms are essentially static, fixed solutions trying to handle situations that are, well, dynamic, constantly changing.
That makes sense. It makes you consider the inherent mismatch right there, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Think about it. We've all been faced with a seemingly endless online form, wondering why on earth they need that specific piece of information, or feeling like you're just stuck in some digital maze.
Lost.
Vertaware's report suggests there's a fundamental reason for that friction, and its roots go further back than you might think.
Way back sometimes.
So our goal today is to really dig into this. Where did forms even come from? What are the hidden frustrations they create? The psychological toll even? And is there a smarter way forward, as Vertaware proposes?
Sounds good. So let's maybe start with the origin story. Why did forms become such a big thing in the first place?
Good question. Where did they start?
Well, the Vertaware report points out that they basically started as a way to bring order to data collection, paper
Right,
forms.
paper, standardization.
Exactly. Created to standardize information, help organize records, and importantly, to establish control and accountability within an organization. It was very much driven by the needs of the business itself.
Okay, so it was about what the organization needed to capture, to control. Makes sense.
Then we transitioned to digital, maybe the 90s, early 2000s.
That's what we just put the paper online.
Pretty much. We largely just replicated those paper forms online. Think of those PDFs you could type into or those really basic HTML forms.
Yeah, I remember those.
The report highlights that the fundamental logic, that initial business-centric thinking, it didn't really evolve much.
So the focus was just on digitizing the process, getting it off paper.
Exactly. Rather than fundamentally rethinking how that process could actually be better for the person filling it out, for you.
Okay, so we ended up with digital interfaces that, as the report notes, kind of just mirror the shortcomings of the offline world.
Complete with rigid rules, sometimes accessibility challenges, and often a real lack of understanding of your specific context, your situation.
And this leads to something the report calls the psychological cost of forms, which really struck me. It's more than just the time it takes, right? There's a mental tax.
Exactly, a mental load.
Yeah,
Long, dense forms can lead to genuine cognitive overload.
just too much at once.
Yeah, you're presented with this wall of information, maybe dozens of fields all at once. It can be quite overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's often the lack of clear guidance. Are certain fields mandatory? Why are they asking for this particular detail now? You're often left to kind of decipher it on your own.
Right, and that feeling of scrolling
Yeah.
and scrolling and not really knowing how much further you have to go.
Yeah. What they call the invisibility of progress. It feels endless.
Plus, the fact that everyone, regardless of their individual situation, sees the exact same set of questions.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel very tailored to you. It's impersonal.
One size fits all, which rarely actually fits anyone perfectly.
And the consequences of these psychological costs, they're pretty significant, aren't they?
They are. The report emphasizes that it can lead to a decrease in trust towards the organization.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
If it's a bad experience.
Right. Higher rates of people just giving up halfway through drop-off rates.
Yeah.
Longer times to actually achieve whatever the form is for, whether it's applying for something or getting support.
So inefficiency.
And ultimately, yeah, a negative impression of the brand or the organization itself. It reflects badly.
Okay, but you might think, hang on, modern web forms are different now. We have responsive designs for mobile autofill features, sometimes those step-by-step wizards.
Sure, there have been improvements on the surface.
But Vertaware argues these are often just, well, surface-level improvements. Lipstick on a pig, maybe?
That's a key distinction they make, yeah. A form that adjusts to the size of your screen responsive layout doesn't automatically translate to a better experience for you, the user.
Doesn't mean the underlying process is any better.
Exactly. An autofill is handy, sure, but it's not the same as the system truly understanding your situation or anticipating your needs. It's just pulling stored data
Okay.
and breaking a long form into multiple pages, step-based progress. It might make it seem less intimidating.
Yeah, less of a wall of text.
But it doesn't necessarily make the underlying flow of the interaction any smarter or more adaptable to you and your specific needs in that moment.
Gotcha. And here's a statistic from the report that really made me raise an eyebrow. Vertaware estimates that only about 15 to 20%
Yeah, get this.
of the fields on most forms are truly essential.
15 to 20%.
The rest, they might be duplicates, maybe they're because of some regulation that could potentially be addressed differently, or even information that the system could figure out automatically, infer.
Think about that. 80 to 85% of the fields might be unnecessary clutter.
That's a huge amount of unnecessary work for the user, just friction.
It really makes you wonder about the wasted effort, the frustration caused, doesn't it?
Totally. So if traditional forms, even the modern-looking ones, have these built-in limitations, what's the alternative? Where do we go from here?
Well, Vertaware suggests a pretty fundamental shift in how we approach this. They start with something they call deconstruction.
Deconstruction. Okay, what does that involve?
It's about asking some very basic but surprisingly powerful questions about every single piece of information being requested on a form. Questions like, what exactly are we trying to find out here? And crucially, why do we need to ask for it directly in this way?
Oh, okay. Challenging the status quo.
Right. Then thinking about what decisions will actually be made based on this data. Could we get this information from a different source, maybe internally or via a trusted third party?
Sourcing it differently.
And ultimately, how can we simplify the process for the user? How can we remove unnecessary steps without increasing risk? It's a very logical, almost investigative approach.
I like that. Taking it apart piece by piece.
And from this deconstruction, this analysis, comes a set of alternative strategies they propose.
Okay, what are those?
Vertaware talks about things like contextual flows, interactions where what you see actually adapts based on who you are and what you're trying to achieve.
So personalized pathways.
Exactly. Imagine applying for a loan. If you indicate you're self-employed, the questions and information requested would naturally be different from someone in full-time employment, right? The flow adapts.
Makes sense. No irrelevant questions.
They also discuss micro-journeys, basically breaking down really complex tasks into smaller, more digestible, manageable steps for the user, less overwhelming.
Bite-sized pieces.
Then there's progressive disclosure. This means only revealing information or asking for details when they're actually needed in the process.
Like in a checkout.
Yeah,
You don't see shipping address fields until you've confirmed your basket.
precisely. Or only showing advanced options if the user indicates they need them. And, of course, incorporating things like smart defaults, pre-filling information intelligently where possible, and inline guidance, providing help and explanations right within the flow, exactly when you might need it.
It sounds like it's really about moving beyond just making a form look better
Way beyond that.
and actually building intelligence and understanding into the interaction itself.
Yeah, it's about, as the report emphasizes, real design and automation working together seamlessly to create a genuinely better experience for the person interacting with the system.
Okay, so how does Vertaware actually enable this? Do they have specific technology?
They do. This is where Vertaware's platform comes into play. They've built their technology around concepts they term invisible AI.
Invisible AI.
Yeah, think of AI working intelligently in the background to understand context, predict needs, and guide the user smoothly without you necessarily having to, explicitly chat with a bot or something. It's embedded.
Okay, subtle intelligence.
Right. They also talk about composable interfaces, meaning flexible building blocks to create these adaptive flows, and human-centered automation, ensuring the automation serves the user's needs first.
And who are they building this for?
They seem to be focusing particularly on industries that often deal with intricate processes and heavy regulations. Think insurance, legal services, government, healthcare, areas where, let's face it, you often encounter the most complex and frustrating forms.
Definitely fertile ground for improvement there.
Yeah.
Do they have results? Does this approach actually work?
Well, they've got some pretty compelling numbers in the report to back it up. They cite what they call Vertaware transformation metrics, things like an average increase in form completion rates of 54%. That's huge.
Wow, more than half getting through.
A 36% average reduction in the time it takes to actually submit the information. Less time wasted.
Faster for everyone.
A significant 71% increase in session continuation, meaning fewer people dropping off.
Keeping people engaged.
Plus, really high user satisfaction scores, around a 4.6 out of 5, and almost a 50% reduction in related support requests.
That last one is big for organizations. Fewer calls, fewer problems.
Absolutely. Those are substantial improvements, not just for the user experience, but for the business's efficiency, too.
Do they have a specific example, like a case study?
Yeah, they highlight one involving a legal tech document builder. It really illustrates the impact.
Okay, what happened there?
They apparently transitioned from this massive 150-field static form, the kind we've been talking about,
Oh,
which had a completion rate of less than 20%. So most people were giving up.
not surprising.
They shifted it to a more conversational, assistant-like approach with an adaptive flow using these principles.
And the result?
The result was a 63% completion rate, so a massive jump. Plus, a 27% increase in referrals generated through the tool, and a 62% decrease in support tickets related to using it.
That's a really tangible difference. It shows how moving away from the static form can lead to real benefits for everyone involved, especially the person just trying to get something done.
Exactly. It's a concrete example.
And Vertaware believes this form-free idea, this flow-based approach, it has potential beyond just legal tech, right?
Oh, yeah. They see wide-ranging benefits across various sectors. They list insurance, legal, healthcare, the public sector, finance, even education. Basically, anywhere complex information exchange happens.
And the core benefits are similar across the board.
Pretty much. The recurring advantages they point to are reduced friction for users. Makes sense. Better compliance, because the guided adaptive process can help ensure regulations are met correctly.
Ah, interesting point. Built-in compliance.
And ultimately, greater trust from the user, because the experience is just better, more respectful of their time and context.
So what's their overall vision here? What are they aiming for?
Their vision, as outlined in the report, is quite clear and maybe a bit bold. They aim to move beyond what they see as fundamentally flawed user experiences, the broken interfaces,
Getting rid of the bad UX.
and instead create digital interactions that truly prioritize people. They really envision a future where the traditional form essentially disappears. It just dissolves into the background.
And what's left?
What remains is a seamless, intuitive flow for the user, a guided conversation almost.
Okay, that sounds ambitious. How do they handle situations where you do have complex documents involved? Like uploading PDFs or dealing with scanned paperwork? That seems like a roadblock to a pure flow.
That's a great question, and it leads to another key part of their strategy, DocuGenie. Yeah, it's their AI-driven document intelligence platform. This sounds like a critical component, particularly when dealing with the vast amounts of paperwork and unstructured data inherent in many of these regulated industries. You know, the places where users often encounter the most complex processes and have to submit supporting documents.
Right, like insurance claims or mortgage applications. Lots of documents.
Precisely. DocuGenie is designed specifically to automate these complex document workflows with remarkable speed and accuracy.
How does it work?
It boasts an extensive library, over 2,800 apparently, of pre-trained deep learning AI models. These are trained on specific document types, including industry standards like ACORD forms in insurance.
So it already knows what to look for in a common document.
That's the idea. They're talking about very high accuracy, up to 99.7% in extracting the necessary information. It supports a wide variety of document types, PDFs, images, emails, you name it.
And integration. Is it hard to plug in?
They emphasize no-code integrations, making it easier for organizations to adopt these improvements without massive IT projects. The goal is to make it accessible, which ultimately benefits the end-user experience too.
So it's not just pulling data out, like OCR.
No, it goes beyond simple extraction. The report talks about AI agents within DocuGenie that can actually understand the content, validate the information against other sources, check for inconsistencies, and even take preliminary actions based on what they find.
Wow. Can you give an example?
The insurance example they provide is pretty compelling. Imagine AI automatically categorizing submitted claim documents,
Okay.
then cross-referencing the claim details with the policy information, maybe even identifying potential fraud indicators based on patterns, and then preparing an initial assessment or summary for a human claims handler to review.
So it handles the heavy lifting, the tedious parts.
Exactly. It means potentially much faster processing times and likely a smoother, less error-prone experience for the customer submitting the claim.
So for Vertaware, DocuGenie is kind of the missing piece. It allows them to truly move beyond forms, even when the interaction inevitably involves unstructured documents.
That seems to be the key. It can understand and process information coming from various channels, uploads, emails, even older systems, making that seamless, compliant, and intelligent workflow a reality across different touch points for the user. It bridges the gap between the slick digital flow and the messy reality of existing documents.
Okay, that makes sense. So if we boil it all down, what's the core advantage that Vertaware is offering here? What's the summary pitch?
It's really that combination of factors we've discussed. They're providing these form-free user journeys driven by dynamic, adaptive AI flows,
Right, the intelligent interaction part.
backed by powerful document intelligence DocuGenie that can understand and process information from virtually any input channel,
Handling the documents.
and all orchestrated by business logic that's both adaptive to the situation and automated for efficiency.
Less manual work, more smarts.
Yeah, their tagline actually encapsulates it pretty well. Less form, more function, all flow.
Less form, more function, all flow. I like that. It sums it up
Oh,
nicely.
it does.
So the key takeaway then, really drilling down based on Vertaware's deep dive into this whole issue, is that those ubiquitous digital forms we all interact with, they might be more than just a minor annoyance.
Much more, potentially.
They could actually be a symptom, an interface, as they say, for deeper inefficiencies or broken processes within organizations. And that leads to unnecessary frustration and hinders productivity for everyone involved, especially the end user.
And the flip side is the potential of moving towards these more intelligent, flow-based interactions. What Vertaware is demonstrating with their platform and their document intelligence capabilities, it's really significant.
It points towards a different future for digital interactions.
Yeah, a future where maybe these things are more intuitive, more personalized to you, and ultimately just more effective at getting the job done smoothly.
It certainly makes you think about your own digital experiences, doesn't it? All those times you've maybe gotten stuck or frustrated with a form. Perhaps there's a fundamentally better way.
Food for thought.
Indeed. And if you, listening, are interested in exploring Vertaware's solutions further, maybe seeing how these ideas might apply to your own work or industry, you can visit their website. It's www.vertaware.com.
Worth checking out if this resonates.
Definitely. And on that note, here's maybe a final thought for you to consider to mull over after this. What other seemingly fundamental processes in our lives, both digital and maybe even physical, might actually just be interfaces for something deeper, something that could be fundamentally rethought to create a much, much better experience for everyone?
That's a big question to end on. What else is just a form in disguise?